Welcome back to another episode of Latinx Business Podcast. I am your host, Randy Gomez, and I do hold an MBA, and I also hold an enrolled agent license with the IRS. So I can help clients navigate the complex tax system of the U.S. Now, let's talk about our guest that we're going to have on today. His name is Alejandro Sanoja. He is a Venezolano, so back-to-back episodes to Venezolanos that are entrepreneurs. They're Latinos who are thriving in the U.S. and are making a business out of working with Latinos and Spanish-speaking individuals and English-speaking individuals, right? So, because we're both, we have the duality of knowing two languages. But I have a great interview coming up. And we talk about different things from our culture, from surviving mindsets to thriving mindsets to your value and what branding is, the definition and history of branding. So, yeah, he also is going to talk about how, coming to the US, his own personal experience pushed him to learn about branding and everything and anything about branding and how that has helped him thrive and in his career. So please help me welcome Alejandro Sanoja into the show. He's our next guest. Alejandro, thanks for coming on to the Latinx Business Show. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me, Randy. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thanks. And let's just get right into it. What is your preferred pronoun? What do you go by?
Thank you for asking. I go by he, him. What about you?
Same. I go by he, him. And I think if I could be more comfortable with it, I would go with they, them. But it's still something that, like people are not used to. Yeah, he, him. But yeah, the first question I have for you, or second, is you describe being an immigrant introvert in the US. And it's almost like playing hard mode in the game, right? So what were the earliest moments when you realized that professional rules here in the US were different from where you grew up in Venezuela?
I remember when I started my MBA program and my plan was to get good grades. I was not a good student. I was a below average GPA student in high school and college. It took me 7 years to finish a 4-year degree. And when I arrived in the MBA program, my mindset was, let me just get the best grades possible.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to help me thrive here. And then I realized that that's not the case. The rules for building a career in the US are very different than Latin America, especially because of the context. I don't remember the book, but there's been a ton of research of the cultures. And you probably know this in Latin American culture, in Asian cultures, we respect authority a lot.
Yes.
Right? Like you would never see a Latino kid speaking back to their mom because they know they're going to get the chancla.
Of course.
Which for those that don't know, the chancla is a very powerful device. It's a flip-flop, but when it's in the hands of a Latino woman, it transforms into a chancla, and it's a very powerful, motivating, and behavior shaping device.
I love that. Yeah.
So when you come to the US, you learn that you have to network. You have to be really good at kind of like people here don't have time. Latin countries, you build relationships. Everybody most of the time is late to everything. We're very much relaxed. We have longer conversations.
Yes.
So there's a lot more time to get your message in. Here in the US, like everything's quick. You should speak up. In the research, I'll try to find the book after so that I can share it. But they basically talk that in the US, it's kind of like speak first and then think. You are allowed to question authority. In our cultures, it's more about think first and speak second. Respect authority. Don't. Some cultures even go to the extreme that they cannot say no. In Japan, for example, if a boss asks you out to like a team group event, even if you can't go, they say yes, and it's very disorienting. So I remember, for example, getting texts from people. I don't know if it's like this in Mexico, but in Venezuela, if you're going to ask, say, your neighbor for their lawnmower to cut your grass, you're probably going to ask them, hey, how are you doing? You're going to ask them about the family, how's the job going, and have like a 15-minute conversation. And then at the end, you'll say, hey, by the way, can I borrow your lawnmower?
Yeah.
But here in the US, it's like straight like, hey, Randy, can I borrow your lawnmower? Yes, no. Okay. It's very different. So I think that's kind of like the challenge that we go through. In most cases, we're in this different culture. We feel like outsiders. We don't really always understand what's going on. So as I was in that program and I started listening to the business communication professors, I realized it's not like, yes, you got to have the hard skills. You got to be competent, but it's really about the soft skills.
Mm.
It's really about being able to connect with people, being able to get your message across, being a good listener. So that's kind of like we can go more into it, but I do
Yeah,
believe that if you're an immigrant and an introvert, if you're a minority in the US, it's not the same. It's a little bit more challenging than somebody that has been born here, knows the culture, their family have been professionals or business owners. You can have that
right.
mentorship, that network, and but it's the
Yeah.
life that we picked. So
No, of course. And that reminds me of one moment. So I have a number of clients in Mexico City, a couple of businesses out there that I work with every year. And I went in October, and I remember, telling the manager that's assigned to my account for that company, like, hey, like, let's meet up and have lunch, right? And for in my head, like, I was born here. Right, East LA, born in Los Angeles, to a Mexican household, from Aguascalientes, Mexico. But I just remember thinking, like, yeah, I'll allocate like an hour for lunch, right? It ended up being a 2.5 hour lunch. And I didn't realize that, yes, she had gone with the intention of meeting up with me. And she brought me like even like some pastelitos from Mexico City and stuff like that, right? So she
mhm,
went beyond, but also then as we're done talking, or before we're done finishing eating, sorry, she starts asking me all these other questions that are related to the business and things and items that she handles for the business and for the bookkeeping and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, you do this and you do that. But again, that took us a whole nother hour to work through all those questions and stuff. And she like was like, oh no, you don't have to walk back. I'll drive you back to your hotel. Like, you don't have to, like, she even took an extra step to do that. And I think here in the US, you're right. Like, we just, like, even tonight I have an event. I'm like, it's from 6 to 9 and we're gonna get there at 6 and I'm gonna leave by 8 because I have my dog at home. And I was like, I was born here and I kind of rush things and I have 1,000 things going on. And that just reminded me of that, to be honest. But you're right, it's so different. Even in my MBA program, we went to China for 10 days. And that was kind of like our study abroad portion of the program. And it's so different. So different.
mhm,
The two cultures, right? The US versus China. And, you can get things manufactured really, really nice or really cheaply out there. But also, more of the struggle would be not getting something manufactured, but, the relationship that you are now building with this manufacturer
mhm,
for your products and your goods, right? And I think maybe that's what I came back with, thinking like, oh, that is tough, because I would either have to start learning Chinese, and there's like different like dialects of Chinese, or I would have to
mhm,
have a translator while I'm out there. And then even when you translate things, they kind of don't really translate to the same feeling of what that person in the other culture is trying to convey to you, because you might interpret it in a different way. But yeah, so
mhm.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I know you're from Guatemala. You're also an MBA. So if you don't mind me asking what MBA school you went to, and I can share which one I went to as well.
I went to the University of Houston, and I'm actually
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know if I know you said you have it you have some to promote, but I checked the last episode, and depending on the publishing order, you might have back to back Venezuelan guests
Yes.
because I think Javier is
Karim.
from
Yeah.
Venezuela. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He's from Maracaibo, though. I'm from Caracas, but you
Oh,
have
okay.
already
That's
two
funny. Yes.
Venezuelans.
When I was getting ready to, I got reminded that both you guys are from Venezuela. But yeah, I think you guys are the only ones from Venezuela. I would have to go back and check the early episodes. I can't remember at the moment, but yeah, it's back to back, two Venezuelans that are
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, and you guys are running businesses. We just released his episode yesterday, so we're still like working on like promoting that one. But that, like, he has like three media outlet companies that are Spanish
Hmm.
media outlets in the Boston and the DC area, and that was a great episode. But yeah, no, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because like yeah, that serendipity, right?
Hmm.
And so two Latinos that are business owners, and they are running, like, I believe what I believe, like, Latino centric like businesses. And one of the things we
Hmm.
mentioned in that episode is the missed opportunity that like the Spanish speaking community is. One, because like there's 62 million Latinos now in the US, or not Latinos, but Spanish speaking Latinos in the US. So what
Hmm.
that means is, like, if you're not promoting your services in Spanish, then you're really missing out on that massive portion of individuals. In another
Right.
episode, I talked to someone about how even my clients in Mexico, there's been some who have pushed back, like even on my pricing and stuff like that. But I'm like, hey, I have to stick firm with that because it's a lot of work that we do, not just during tax season, but throughout the year. And
Hmm.
even with the pushback of the pricing, because it's so significantly different from Mexico, they've come back to me and said, no, we want to work to you with you, Randy, because we can speak to you in Spanish. Right. So
Wow, there
like,
you go.
yeah, and it's just sticking strong to you, knowing that what your value is, but also like, it's been like what, 6, 7 years since I started taking on companies from Mexico, Monterrey or Mexico City or Guadalajara, right? So, but yeah, that definitely it's a business opportunity. But yeah, let me ask you the next question, which is you didn't come from the US chasing prestige. You came because going back wasn't an option. How did that pressure shape your mindset during your MBA? And how does that survival driven motivation resonate with many Latino professionals today?
I think most Latinos are in survival mode here in the US. In my case, it was because of everything that's going on in Venezuela, and it's been, of course, in the news a lot
Hmm.
more
Yeah.
recently. But a little bit of the summary is the three negative records that we've broken. One, we've had the biggest refugee crisis of this continent. So more than
Mm.
8 to 10 million Venezuelans have left the country. That's about
Wow.
30% of the population. Then the second one is we had one year with over 1 million% inflation. So imagine
Yeah.
we were going a little bit crazy in the past years when we reached kind of like 10, 12%.
Yeah.
Imagine 1 million%, right? Like that's every second you're in the grocery store, you grab the product, and every second the price is going up from where you grab it
Wow.
to going and paying for it.
Yeah.
And then the third is we had over a 30% GDP drop in one year. And I think at this
Yeah.
point, it's over 80% total from
Right.
when Chavez took power. So they basically destroyed the country. So all of us kind of like left looking for something better where we can build a future. In my case, of course, going back wasn't an option because what my mom was waiting for me with a chancla in her hand if I
You're
didn't
like,
make
hey,
it
that's
here.
worse than inflation, right? Your
Yeah.
mom. I'm glad. I would fear a lot more.
So yeah. So I had to make it work and I did
Mhm.
kind of like anything in everything at that time to make it here, right? Like I started learning about networking. I took improv comedy classes. I went to Toastmasters. I would volunteer for any extracurricular activities. As you probably know, in
Yeah.
MBA programs, you have clubs and events. So I would go to all of these events. And of course, it worked. I did well in the program. I stayed connected so much so that I'm now teaching in the executive MBA program at Bauer. But I think something that happens is that survival mode mindset is really good and the pressure is really good to a certain extent because there's a book called Flow. I'm not going to name the author because he has a very complicated, I think it's Russian
Oh,
name. I'm not
you
going
know
to
what? I think they made us read that book in my MBA program. If I,
Yeah, it's really
yeah,
good. And basically, the summary is that humans like progress. So what we
yes.
want is to be in a state where the challenge that we're facing, it's not so easy that it's boring because
Hmm.
then we disconnect, but it's not so difficult that we get frustrated. So it's this kind of like box of the enough pressure so that you stay focused on the task. And as you put in effort into it, you feel like you're progressing. So that challenge of the different culture, the different country, the different language was really good for me because it pushed me to being where I am today. But I think at some point, and this happens, I see it a lot with Latino professionals because I work with mostly either Latino leaders or organizations that are helping Latinos.
Hmm.
And we stay in that survival mode. We don't make the switch to thriving. So we keep our heads down. We're kind of like in fear mode of, hey, I don't want to raise prices because what if I lose clients? I'm lucky enough to be where I am. So we end up
Yeah.
overworked, overweight, overstressed, and not really making it to the next level where we're setting limits where hey, after 5, I don't take meetings because I want to be with family or I want to go work out or I want to do this thing that gives me energy. Because
Right.
work is made to support your life, not you're not alive just to work. So that's kind of like what happened in that situation. The pressure helped me, but at some point it was just too much. And you
Yeah.
probably know this. When you do an MBA program, you discover this new gear of productivity that you never know you had, but you
Yes.
cannot keep it forever. It's
Yeah.
good to have it as a sixth gear that every once in a while, When you have a
Okay.
sprint, you do it, but you cannot stay there. So that's kind of like how my mindset have changed. The pressure was great. At the moment, it was very challenging, but now I appreciate it because if not, I wouldn't be here in the US. I wouldn't have mastered the language. I wouldn't be teaching at the
Right.
University of Houston. So many, many good things. But also as Latinos, we have to learn to, at some point, make the switch from that survival mode to thriving mode so that we can get to the next level.
Man, okay, so like you're like describing my story, right? Because like I do taxes, right? So I first started, and let me just give you a little background on how I did that. I worked full time, 9 to 5, or 8 to 5, or 8 to 7, whatever you want to call it during tax season, like 10, 12 hour days, right? And I would go home, and I remember thinking, I need to like, I need to go work out, I need to go home, I need to shower and get ready, and I need to wake up again because now when I got home, I had to do like my cousin's taxes, or I had to do my friend's taxes, or I had to do like, a business that someone recommended to me. So I did that for about like 2 years, to be honest. And then the pandemic hit. So I was just, and I had built up enough clients where then I finally decided to leave. 100% when I first started, I wasn't charging what my value and worth was in terms of bringing what the tax knowledge and tax law and my MBA and everything behind it, because like it was friends and families, right? So I was just like, I just don't want to do it for free because I don't want them to think it's a free service, and a lot of people take advantage of that, right? Or don't really
Hmm.
value your service at that point. But it has been a struggle because like, and your family is great. Like, I mean, like my mom and my dad and my sisters and my friends, my best friend, they've all been like, oh, maybe you should do their taxes, recommend people, right? And again, but our community's so used to paying like $100 for a tax return around the corner, or 150. They've never seen like super high prices on tax returns. But then they also get super low service, and they also get tax preparers who don't reach back to them, who don't tell them this is what you have to do next, this is what you should do to protect yourself in case you're audited and stuff like that, right? So it definitely has been a struggle, and I see that, and I hear that mode of or that situation you're describing where you need to switch from survival to thriving. So when I first started taxes, it was all survival mode. Like I
Hmm.
I worked for the city of Los Angeles, and they're like, we can give you more hours if you learn how to do taxes. And I was like, yeah, I didn't go to school for this, but I needed to work.
Hmm.
So like it came out of a necessity, and out of necessity I think also comes a lot of innovation, which I think our community and our people are super great at innovating. All these businesses that I see that have sparked up in the last 3, 4 years, people working out of their homes or selling. There's this woman in like I'm not exactly sure where she lives, but in the South LA area, where she packs burritos all morning long, and then she goes and sells out by like 8 in the morning. And everyone's supporting her because, otherwise, she would have to go out and work, and she doesn't want to be like in the public eye because of ICE, right?
Hmm.
So I find this like
Hmm.
drive in our community, and people like you, who come and need to survive and need to say like, I'm gonna make it one way or another, versus like sometimes people who are born and raised here don't have that same drive, right? Our commitment to being like, I want to better myself. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that, because that's coming from a very vulnerable place in my point of view. But yeah, the next question would be, early on you were told directly or indirectly that success required becoming an extrovert. What did putting on extrovert masks cost you personally and professionally? I guess not being yourself. Yeah.
We all hear that message of your network is your net worth. And to a certain extent, there's a lot of
Mhm.
truth there. But also at some point, I started thinking that it's the other way around, right? Like everybody says, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And
Right.
then I realized it's not really what you know, it's not really who you know, it's who knows you. If you don't show yourself, if you are not clear about your message, what you can do for others and your value, then people are not going to have a clear picture of who you are. And it's very dangerous because I read this, I think it's in the book about introverts quiet. I believe it's Susan Cain that talks about the power of introverts. And it's very dangerous if you are a quiet person, because people make up a story in their heads about you if you don't do it for yourself. And
Interesting.
humans are wired to be negative. There's in the Daniel Kahneman book, Thinking Fast and Slow, they show that basically for you to feel the same emotion that you feel when you lose $100, you have to make $250.
Wow.
That's how wired for negativity our brain
Yeah.
is. So imagine when you don't talk, people are making up probably negative stories about you in their head. So that's why it's so important to get your message across. And I remember at first I did anything and everything. I remember I was so into going to events that my classmates asked me like, hey, what are you going to do next week? We're all going to, and I remember where they were going. And I'm like, what do you mean spring break? Next week we have like two events. There's a conference, there's this, there's that. And I had no idea that we had a free week. In my head, I was just so about, hey, three events. I always had my suit in my car just so if like an interview or something popped up, I was ready. I took the MBA. I remember people going, I don't know, with flip flops and shorts. I'm not judging, but I was so
Right.
ready, right? Like I took it as this is my job. I need to be at least business casual because you never know who you're going to meet and who
Right.
is going to make up a story about you in their mind. So it was very tiring. I would go to conferences 2, 3, 4 days, try to be on, talk to people. And at some point, I realized that yes, you got to network, you got to build connections, but you got to do it in a way that it's true to you. So what I learned about
Mm.
me is like, I love this. I could probably talk. I know I'm not going to be able to ask you questions because the podcast, I'm the guest on the
Yeah.
podcast, and the
You're the
goal is
guest.
to get my story out there. But I have so many questions that I would want to ask you, and I am sure that you and I could have a 2-hour conversation where we're going to leave, we're going to feel connected, we're going to learn about each other, and
Right.
we're going to have trust. And I love that. One on one, I could do, and I feel energized. I'm like, wow, what an awesome guy. I had a conversation with another Latino leader that I saw on LinkedIn. I saw he got promoted. I sent a message like, hey, awesome, congratulations. And we connect. I was like, hey, just want to get to know each other. We had an awesome conversation. I learned about his story, which is amazing. So I can do that. And
Yeah.
that's a way to do it that a lot of people don't tell you. You feel you have to go to these big events, big conferences, and it's the only way. Same with, for example, doing presentations. I feel like that's such a secret to being able to be seen as an expert,
Yeah.
create opportunities for yourself, connect with others. And because we're so afraid to do it, we don't do it. Same with like posting on LinkedIn, for example. There's a lot of introverts who like, hey, what should I talk about? What do I do with this? I'm not the biggest expert. For example, for you, well, I'm not the biggest expert on tax in the world. Should I be posting about this? And there's all these doubts and things that prevent us, like these stories that we think, to succeed, I have to do it this way, like this person. And it's not true. So I think we have to go through that exploration process of, yes, we got to put ourselves out there. We got to tell a story and we got to build connections, but you have to find a way that it feels true to you and energizing, because if not, you're not going to be able to do it. So that's what I learned through that MBA journey. I tried a little bit of
Yeah.
everything. And after it, that I was a little bit burnt out, had pain everywhere. I realized, okay, these things do not work for me. These others do. And now most of my networking is either when I'm teaching a guest lecture and meeting students, when I'm teaching my classes, doing things like this, doing webinars, connecting with people on LinkedIn. And it's one on one. I love it. We can have deeper conversations. So what I would say is find, explore, do a little bit of everything. What takes energy away from you, try to stay away from that. What gives you energy, do more of that.
Do more of that. That's great. I love that advice, because that kind of made me think about my podcast in general. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier I started during the pandemic, and last year I started doing it again. And the year before that, I got bombarded with work. So the podcast really did work for me in terms of like getting more clients in the door and in a more organic way as well, because,
Hmm.
it makes you or puts you on that level of expertise. Plus, it's recorded, so it's out there on the World Wide Web forever. So what you say
Right.
matters. It's important. But yeah, that did
And
make
you'd
me
be
think of
you'd
that.
be surprised. Because I
Mhm.
also started doing a podcast at some point.
Uh-huh.
We stopped for different reasons, but we might start it again soon. And we did it probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And every week I still get a report of I don't know, 20 to 50 listens every week, even
Yeah.
after years of posting it, which is powerful because people
Yeah.
are spending time with you, listening to you, to your
Mhm.
insights, getting to know you, getting to know your
Yeah.
guests without you doing anything. So I do believe not only it's a powerful relationship building opportunity, because then you and I are going to know each other.
Yeah.
The audience also is building a relationship with us, but also the knowledge that you're sharing and positioning you as an expert because it's out there and people can
Yeah.
find it and listen to it.
Yeah, and I also went to like a podcast conference last year, which was in Houston, actually. You say you're in the Houston area, right? No, I'm sorry, it was in the
Yes.
Dallas area. I apologize. But yeah, and I learned a lot. But basically, after the first, second day, I was like, yeah, I need to, like, you need to consistently post. So that was one thing that, came about from that last year. And that's why we're posting a lot more this year. It is another, like, if anyone out there is listening in terms of like wanting to start a podcast, it's a lot of work. I won't, even you saying like you stopped it, I get it. I get why you stopped. I've thought about that plenty of times. I've thought about, okay, my business is doing pretty well right now. Do I really need to continue doing the podcast? But the reason I started the podcast, yes, it was because of like that knowledge that one of my mentors had provided to me. But it was really to share more information, right? So I grew up in East LA and a very hardworking community. My dad's an electrician. My mom's a stay-at-home mom. So my direct relatives who are business owners are in Mexico. None of them were here, right?
Mm.
So I don't think I ever really saw like a Latino face like I could like turn around to and say like, hey, like, oh, like maybe that could be me one day because I always wanted to be in business. I always wanted to run a company or be in management. I just wasn't really sure or guided in the right direction, right? When I was younger. So for me, even joining my MBA program, I was like one of the few Latinos in the program, right? So even that was a shock too. And I was just like, how are the Latinos smarter than every other person here yet? Like the other students sometimes are getting more of the praise. And you're right, that's because they would speak up. And America does praise that a lot more. So even if you're saying the wrong things, you might still come out winning. You know what I mean? And we would like sit back and be like, yeah, that person's dumb, but like we know the right answer or something like that. But more humbly, right? More humble in more humble terms. But yeah, I see it a lot. But yeah, even this podcast, like man, this it takes a team to produce it.
Hmm.
And it takes researching each other. Like we had to research you and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I mean Riverside. This platform has been a game changer for us, definitely. But let's see. The next question would be where was I? Five. You mastered networking, public speaking, and influence, but you still felt exhausted. You don't look exhausted right now, actually. You seem pretty energized by it, as you mentioned earlier. But at what point did you realize that the problem wasn't your ability, but the rules of the game?
We tried a lot, like I said, even at some point or business growth, as you know, at first you got to try anything and everything. When you don't have that cash flow and you're willing to, hey, whatever you need, I'll do it
Yeah.
if it's legal and you're going to pay me. So I think at first you start doing a little bit of everything. I remember before having this business, I partner up with a classmate from the
Hmm.
MBA program, and we would meet with anybody that if they needed a website, anything related to marketing, and we would do
Yeah.
proposals. We would print the proposals. They were beautiful. Each proposal was customized to the potential client. We would sometimes have several meetings, and most of the time, either the people didn't have the budget, and it was not a good prospect. We shouldn't now, of course, with what I know now, that should have been a phone call maybe, and I should have asked better questions.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
but you go through you have to make those mistakes because it's part of it. So I think you have to try all of these things and then you find what works for you. Because I remember I joined at some point, one of the things that I tried was
Mhm.
joining like a group coaching community for ghostwriters. So we're all in the
Mhm.
same niche. And we're trying to help each other through the process. And one of their methods was to do outreach. And I started doing it, which is basically you find people in your niche, you start a conversation on LinkedIn, and then you try to have like a Zoom get to know you call. And
Okay.
it would be 15-minute calls just to kind of like get to know you and ask enough discovery
Yeah.
questions to qualify the other person. And I did it for a couple of weeks and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I
The cold
could
calling.
not do it anymore. almost. It's a little bit like
Yeah.
cold messaging, and then the call is not so cold. But and I did it, and I met awesome people that I connected on LinkedIn with, and I follow the journey now. But I said to myself, if I have to do this for the rest of my life, I am gonna shoot myself because I
Yeah.
hate it.
Right.
It feels empty. It feels fake. That 15-minute interaction where you cannot really
Mhm.
get to know somebody else. I just stopped doing it. And then I realized, hey, if I just do the same that I do for my clients, I do it for myself. I create good content. I start ranking on Google. Now AI has changed the game a little bit, but for a while we had almost 5,000 people visiting our website every day because we
Wow.
ranked pretty well for personal branding terms, personal branding coach, consultant. And I realized I don't have to, there's many ways to grow a business. The introvert way is like, hey, do really good content. This, for example, is the introvert way. We're going to do content. We're having this conversation, and then we can cut
Mhm.
it and put our expertise out there and let
Right.
people find us. What you got to work on is on refining your message. You got to really understand your ideal customers' problems. You got to speak to those problems. You got to educate them and give them some solutions that they can do on their own so they can
Right.
trust you. And when they are ready, because not everybody that's in your ideal audience is ready to buy, usually only 5% of people are ready to buy. When they're ready, they already know you, they've seen your content, and they'll come to you. So that's what I learned, that
Yep.
sometimes we think that there's only one way to play the game, especially in this building your expertise or growing your business if you're a business owner, or growing your personal brand if you're an employee and want to be seen as an expert and uh,
In that field, yeah. And
be
the work
sought
you
out
do.
by companies. There's many ways to do it. There's many, many ways, even in the personal brand space, that people think that
Right.
is, hey, I have to do TikTok dance videos and I have
Yeah.
to do memes. Not at all. Not at
Yeah.
all. I have to show like my everyday, how I go to the bathroom and how it's like, no,
No,
that's
no.
like one way to do it. There's many ways to do it.
Thank
So
God there's more.
that
I'm
was,
glad you're
that was
bringing
my
this up.
biggest lesson.
Sorry for interrupting, but
Go
thanks
ahead.
for bringing that up because you're right. Like you see online, and we're all consumed by social media nowadays, and LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Like I personally, Snapchat. I personally cannot be on more than like two or three platforms. I think it mentally exhausts me. So in creating content and doing stuff like that, for me, it is like a whole nother job. But also at the end of the day, like you see that the people who are being successful are the ones creating that content, right? But you're right. Like, I mean, even when I bring in new clients, um, and I get referrals like maybe once a week or twice a week, not that many, but I'm also really mindful of my referrals because now I have to worry about capacity, right? Like, do we have the
Mm,
capacity to take them on? And I will probably meet with someone two or three times even before they become a bookkeeping client or a tax client, because we do both services. But yeah, you just made me think about how, like, meeting with them two, three times, like phone call, email, video calls. I do all video calls. I exclusively just do all virtual services for my clients now. Thank God for the pandemic because, my tia, my
mhm.
tios were like, we want to come see you, mijo. And I was like, I love you guys, but, I will guarantee a better service if you're not in front of me asking me questions as I'm entering your W-2, you know?
Yeah.
That has been kind of a blessing for me. I mean, the pandemic was a blessing for my business because we did have to like push everyone to be virtual at that point. And switching Latinos from a costumbre that they're so used to, right? And being like,
Mhm.
there's another way. And I think maybe that's also like a big lesson too here because like there's a way we do it as Latinos, but that is not the only way, just as you mentioned earlier, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that. The next question would be, you often say personal branding isn't for influencers, it's a life tool. How should professionals, especially first gen Latinos, rethink what personal brand actually means?
It's important that you learn how to tell your story. And your story can be the typical 30-second elevator pitch when
Mhm.
you are at a networking event, at a career fair, if you're part of a board and they say, hey, let's go around and introduce each other. Every moment where you get the opportunity to speak is a personal branding moment. It's a moment where you're going to leave a mark on somebody else's brain because that's where the word comes from. It's
Hmm.
to leave a mark, kind of like they did it with horses, and then
Branding.
they leave a mark. That is where branding comes from. So what you're doing with personal branding is you want to leave that mark on somebody's brain so that they remember you. Something about you has to be memorable. So the goal of people get it confused. They think personal branding is about only self promotion, only speaking about you. And it's real about being really clear about how you can help others because
Yeah.
we're not really good at that. I think in your case, because people understand tax, like, hey, everybody has to file their taxes. It's kind of like easier in that sense, but still, what does that mean? What does it mean that you're going to do my taxes, right? Does it mean that I just hand you, hey, do my taxes and that's it? What do I have to
Right.
do? Do I have to collect my receipts? What type of records do I have to keep to make it easy for you? Do you do it every month? Is it only the tax filing? What is bookkeeping, right? Like people know that they have to do
Yeah.
taxes. So we have to be really good at telling our story and tailoring to the different audiences that we have. I'm sure you get together with your family in Thanksgiving or Christmas or the holidays, and they ask you, hey, can you remind me, what do you do? And if you don't have a good story, you might be missing opportunities. Because in your case, for example, everybody needs what you do. Everybody,
And
especially in the US. So you have to be really good at telling the story in front of different people. The long version, for example, if you're the guest of a podcast, you have to have the long version and you have to make sure that it connects with people because the story is not about you. It's about how you can help others. This is something that I go through in every class or guest lecture about storytelling in business that I give is that you need to tell the stories as the guide, not as the hero, because you want the
okay.
person in front of you, your client or whomever is in front of you, to see themselves as the hero. That's a big mistake that we make. So we're Gandalf in the story. We are Yoda, Dumbledore. We are the
Right. Right.
person guiding the protagonist. So if you look at my story, for example, there's a lot of components about being an immigrant, being an introvert, not really feeling comfortable, and how I was able to go through all that because I want people who are Latinos, who are immigrants, who are minorities to see that, hey, I've been through some of the challenges that you're probably facing or some of the
Mhm.
things that we've been talking about that you just said, hey,
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of like know my story because my story is really about how I can help others, not really about how great I am at what I do. So I think that is the rethink that we have to do. Personal branding is about clearly communicating how you can help your tribe so that your tribe finds you and you can be valuable to them.
Wow, that's great. That's a great message. And you know what? I was just thinking about because of the things you were saying, how much can, being Latino or our culture influence us not wanting to brand ourselves, right? Like we're taught to respect your elderlies, your grandparents have been here longer than you, so they know better than you no matter what, right? You don't question that, right? And then it's so weird because I feel like myself growing up here in the US, you grow up thinking like, well, I would want to say the social landscape ever since I was a little kid has always been like, be yourself, be unique. And be outspoken, very like US type of way. And then in going to Mexico, it's like, oh no, you don't like speak up. You don't interrupt like the adult conversations. You're a child. You're not an adult, like, and so like how much of that do we have to break as Latino entrepreneurs and like you said, empresarios that like we're so accustomed to like this duality, but that's what you're here for, I guess, that's what your message is, that you can help us, Latino entrepreneurs or business and professionals to push through that barrier because I'm not gonna lie, I think I have struggled with it a lot, and it sometimes seems like in our culture, like if you promote yourself, like if you're being self-centered almost, right? So I think that's kind of like the mindset that I've struggled with being like, oh, that person just wants to make themselves popular or something like that, or be
Mm.
like always the one that you're talking about and stuff like that. But yeah, no, for me, I think in the last couple of years, I've gotten more used to promoting myself and stuff like that. But it's still like I sit on the board of the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, and I'm the interim treasurer at the moment. And last year, I was just part of the board, so I was like, I don't want to take on this whole new position. But then they've done a lot of marketing on their end, and I get to repost it and stuff like that, and I don't have to like think about that kind of marketing. But it's
Mhm.
it's just like yeah, it's been easier for me to just repost and repromote that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, thanks for sharing about what personal brand actually means. And then that whole branding, like it came, like it's so funny how like if you sit down and research words or just look at the definitions, you'll find the history behind all these words, right? And I think that's what I find most interesting. Like you looked up what branding means and where it came from. And to me, even though the word is great, to me the history and the knowledge behind that means like 1,000 times more than like its actual
Hmm.
definition, which is like to me is more valuable. But yeah, so next question. Why is content such a powerful way for people who don't naturally seek the spotlight to level the playing field? And what are the common mistakes you see among Latino professionals when trying to communicate their value and avoid remaining invisible?
The content, especially nowadays, is one of the most powerful things you can do because of that fear, right?
Mhm.
There's two big things that prevent us from being good storytellers or putting ourselves out there, which is why public speaking is the number one fear in most cases. People fear public speaking more than death. And this is because of our
Okay.
reptilian brain. Again, going back to that, we're wired for negativity because
Right.
if we're a little bit negative and we're a little bit more afraid, we'll survive more. Right? If you're walking in the jungle and you
Right.
see like a bush move and you're not afraid, the tiger or the lion might eat you because you weren't
Yeah.
afraid. But if you see something move and you pull out your spear or your sword, you're going to be better prepared. So our
Okay.
brain is wired for negativity. And what happens is when we put ourselves out there in front of people, whether it's in person, in public speaking, or whether it's on LinkedIn or on social media, we're afraid because the majority of the times as humans throughout history, where we are in front of people, it's one or two situations. One, you're the leader of that group and they're looking at you for answers.
Hmm.
Leader, where should we migrate this season to see if we can find shelter? Where can we go to hunt? Where should we hunt this season to get some food? Where
Right.
should we build a camp that we're going to be protected from the elements? And these are all questions. Imagine if it's difficult to predict the weather nowadays with all the technology that we have, right? Like sometimes we predict, hey, there's a storm coming, get ready, and nothing happens. Imagine throughout the history of humanity where we didn't have the tools. So as a leader, you had a lot of stress and responsibility. So that's why your brain is telling you like, hey, don't put yourself out there. Don't do it because it's trying to help you survive. And then the second time, the second most usual time when you were in front of people is because they were going to kill you, right? They were enemies and they had
Oh, right.
surrounded you. And so it makes a lot of sense that your brain is trying to protect you. Hey, don't do that. You're in danger. So we have to bypass that. And in my case, it was going back to the other story. I
Yeah.
didn't have any other choice. I had to make it work. I'm like, I don't care what people think. I'm just have to do it. And to your point about the advice, when we have family that gives us advice, it's good intention, but bad advice. It's bad
Mm.
advice with good intentions
Right.
because they're trying to protect you because they don't know the route that you're taking. If you come here and you try to start your own business, it's kind of like your family's trying to get you to go the paved way. Hey, go this way because this is what we did and look at where we are. This works. This is safe. Do this. You're basically trying to go into the jungle by trying to be a business owner, doing something different that a lot of people haven't done. So it feels scary. And
Right.
at the beginning, where you don't really know what you're doing, it's easier to listen to the advice and go that way. So I think you have to make sure that you're listening to the advice of the people who have been able to achieve the things that you want to achieve because they have traveled that
Right.
different path. At some point, probably, at this point, probably nobody can talk you away from doing your business because once you're in the jungle, you're comfortable with it. You're
Absolutely.
like, you've been
There's
there for
no
so
way.
long.
I will never go back to being somebody's employee and until the day I die, there's no way. I remember when I switched over from like working full time for someone and then I was on my own. It was almost the same feeling I felt when I went from high school to college because high school is so structured. You get there at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you get out at 3, 4, then you do your sports because I was always in sports or leadership. And then you get home by like 5 or 6, then you eat, have dinner, you shower, you get ready, you do your homework, and then it's time to go to sleep. And then you do it all over again. And when I hit college, I remember being discombobulated. Like I just couldn't I figure out. I was like, what do you mean I make my own schedule? What do you mean I get to decide when I eat? What do you mean when I have lunch or breakfast or dinner or like, oh, it's been a week. I haven't called my mom or my dad. Like it's like so many new things that like if it was so different and new to me That is exactly the same feeling I felt when I went from being an employee who had to work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. to owning my business. It was freedom and it's scary. It's so scary, but like now I would not change it for anything in the world. But yes, sorry for interrupting.
Right? Like once you've made the choice and which is what the typical advice is, right? Like keep doing what you're doing. Don't listen to the naysayers. Because once you've been doing it for long enough, now you're comfortable in that jungle. And people don't get it because they want to go the paved route. You're going down this new route. So I think that is what happens when you start
Mhm.
taking this new route. And it helps a lot when you really focus on the audience. Because if you really, some people are really selfish and they really want like, hey, I'm just doing this because I want the benefit for me. That's
Right.
when the fear might stop you because you don't really have an important purpose. But for example, I work with one of our clients is Ensemble Learning. They are a nonprofit that helps multilingual learners. So all these kids, sons and daughters of immigrants who are struggling at school because they don't know English, the nonprofit helps them. So it's very easy for the experts to allow us to help them promote themselves because they understand, hey, the more people that know about you and what you're doing, the more multilingual learners are going to be able to not just survive, but thrive in the school system. So
Right.
when the message and the mission that you're doing is so important and it's so connected to your heart, the fear of the criticism that you might get for doing it, it's way lower than the fear of not being able to help these kids,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So when you are a purpose driven professional, it's not that hard to put yourself out there. So I think it's important when you're facing that fear, take it back to who is going to benefit from you achieving your goals in
Right.
your business, your money goals, your personal growth goals, because then it's not about you. And then the criticism is kind of like noise that you don't really care about because you start actually paying attention to the people that connect with it, to the messages of like, hey, Randy, thank you for sharing that tax advice. I just implemented it and it saved me X hours or X amount in taxes. So that's kind of like the bigger challenges that I see with people who are starting to put themselves out there, who have the fear and just want to remain invisible. Connect it
Mm.
back to your purpose, to something meaningful, and it's not going to be that hard to put yourself out there.
That's great advice. Thanks for sharing that. And then another question for you. Authentic leadership often conflicts with systems that reward loudness and constant visibility. How can an introvert or culturally grounded leaders lead powerfully without compromising who they are?
Find what works for you. This goes back to that initial question that we had. You have to find what works for you, and you have to be okay with sharing your message the way it feels true to you. And this takes time. If you follow the
Mm.
journey of
Yeah.
influencers, it's very interesting to see that a lot of them say that they started creating content. It felt like a lot of work. And the moment they took the mask off and started being more themselves is when they started connecting with people. So
Mm.
that is kind of like the balance that you have to achieve. If you always have to put a mask on and you're not being who you really are,
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot of work. This is what I tell people, for example, in being authentic to yourself in the way you create content and you put yourself out there. Because if you have to, and you know this because you know the podcast, if you have to script everything you do on camera and everything has to be perfect because you're afraid of criticism, you're
Right.
never going to post a video. Never. And I see this with
Yeah.
clients all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus if you're comfortable, for example, there's some people who are comfortable in flow. So put up a camera and just start talking. If that's you, you feel comfortable, you're a little bit extroverted, get up a camera and start talking about the things that you know. If you have clients, I'm sure your clients ask you typical questions all the time. That's great content. Answer that question in front of the camera. That's one way, true to you. The other way, if
Mm.
you're not that comfortable, kind of like
Right.
going off the cuff, then record your longer conversations. If you're doing webinars, if you're doing presentations like this, we're going to record this and then we both can chop it up and have like several 1-2 minute videos, 30-second videos with tips and put it out there and have
Right.
content that promotes you. So you have to find what feels energizing for you in the way you put yourself out there and in the way that feels as close as you as possible. Of course, we all have the way we talk with friends outside of work and we make jokes might be a little bit different,
Yeah.
than how we are professionally. The way we dress, for example, if I'm going to teach a class, I'm going to dress differently than if I'm going to a different event. That doesn't mean that you're being fake. It's just like respecting the space and the norms of where we are, but
Hmm.
always make sure that each day, each week, each year, you're moving towards being as close as possible to being the same person in every space, because then it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like being yourself, and it's not going to drain you from putting content, because that's what happens with people. They feel like every piece of content has to be perfect. And in
Right.
fact, this is something that a lot of influencers do, which is they purposely make mistakes on the video so
Yeah.
that
I've heard of
people
that.
comment. I've seen, I don't remember who it was recently, but they on purpose like shared a wrong. It's a super known stat, and they shared that wrong. It was, say it was like 40. Let's say we're talking about Hispanics and we say, hey, Hispanics are now close to being 50% of the population of the country. And you say Hispanics are now close to being 90% of the population of the country. And you just like,
Yeah.
you are so comfortable with yourself and with being criticized, and you know why you're doing the things that you're doing, that you feel comfortable looking like a fool, making the mistake, because that you know that's going to help you actually get people commenting, correcting you. That's going to drive engagement. It's going to drive virality. And
Hmm.
then you're going to be able to reach more people with the good message that you have in your video. So I've seen that a lot, people making mistakes on purpose, either typos or the wrong title or the wrong stats, because they
Yeah.
know that drives engagement. And that just speaks to how comfortable you are with looking like a fool for the purpose of your message and the people that you serve.
Man, that's amazing advice. And that reminds me of like, so I'm part of this entrepreneur group where we meet in Thailand and Mexico City every year. And we have other entrepreneurs give presentations on their YouTube channels and stuff like that. And I learned there firsthand, like that really does drive engagement, right? Like people will love to correct you. And even if they don't have the time of the day, they see that error, they're going to go back and comment and say, hey, you misspelled that. Even if it's that, because then somebody else is going to go look up like what did he misspell, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like that definitely drives content. I personally have not done anything like that, but now that I have the YouTube channel, maybe I'll try it. But like, but no, actually I'm kind of sad, but this is our last question. We have reached the end. So how can a listener get a hold of you, or what is the best channel to connect with you or your team? How does someone say, hey, I want to go take an Alejandro Sanoja class, or I need you to help me with my branding?
Yeah, we're on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn, Alejandro Sanoja. I pop up first, usually on that search. LatinPresarios.com is our website. We have a form there if people want to book a call. We have a ton of content. We usually rank pretty well on anything related to personal brand. But yeah, we're on LinkedIn at any time. I'm happy to have a conversation. We work with purpose-driven
Awesome.
Latino leaders. We're very passionate about what we do, helping the Hispanic community. We have a lot of momentum now with everything that's going on, right? Like Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and we're a growing group, and we're
Right.
realizing it, how much power we have. So it's time for us to come together, help each other, support the community, and come out stronger, because we are facing a lot of challenges. You mentioned it with ICE and everything that's going on, with all the anti-immigrant situation that we have in the country right now. So we got to stick together. We got to put our message out there. So find me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to have a conversation with anyone who needs help, even if it might not end up being a client. I'm always happy
Yeah. No,
to
that's
dedicate some of my time to help people.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that because I think those listening, can connect and can connect with you or your team, right? Because I think you're right. I think our culture is so different than the U.S. culture, but now we are living in the U.S. Ton of us have always been here, right? So it's so interesting that like a mind shift needs to happen in general. But I appreciate you coming on today, all your knowledge. It's been great. I think you've given a lot of informative knowledge for business owners or Latino entrepreneurs, Latinos or Latinas. But yes, thank you, Alejandro, for coming on board. And until next time.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your network. Your support helps our Latinx business community grow stronger with every listen, and I truly invite you to connect with us. Send us your questions, your comments, or even your own business stories to randy@rgtaxes.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep building your business, and keep growing your business mindset.